11 or 12 at best in the east, whereas further west 15, 16, maybe 17, 18 in western Scotland. Feeling fairly pleasant once more here. Staying fine and clear across Scotland and Northern Ireland on Thursday night. Chance of seeing the aurora, actually. Whereas for England and Wales, a very different picture with cloud and rain spilling in. So quite a difference here on Friday. Much more clouds, some heavy showers possible in the south. And this zone of wetter weather sitting over parts of Lincolnshire, Northern England, into the Midlands and into parts of Wales. And we're still with that easterly wind. If you're stuck under that rain, it's going to feel pretty bleak, I suspect, during Friday, with temperatures 10 or 11 at best. Again, Western Scotland, top of the temperature tree, 16 or 17 here. Goodbye.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, hello there. It's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight, I'm asking, should there be a single mile of motorway in this country that does not have a hard shoulder? I think absolutely not. 69% of motorists apparently agree with me. Are you one of them? And if not, how do you think it's safe to be on a motorway without one? Your thoughts on that? And I've realised, everyone, I'm in the wrong job. I think I need to pack it all in and go and lead a council, because it's been revealed today the eye-watering sums of money that are up for grabs if you do such a job. I wouldn't mind, though, how council tax is going up. The service we receive, though, seems to be going down. Is it time to cap these leaders' pay, or do you need to pay big money for big brains. Your thoughts on that? And do you have a pet dog? If it bit your child, would you keep it? A mum has divided people by doing exactly that. Would you ever keep your dog in the same home as a child once it bitten it? Ooh, that I think will divide opinions. And people like Just Stop Oil. One of my panel says that they should be designated basically domestic terrorists. The other says domestic heroes is what they are. What says you? We'll get into it all tonight. But before we do so, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines with a legend that is Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you. Good evening to you. Our top story today on GB News. MSP Colin Beattie has resigned as SNP Treasurer and from Holyrood's Public Audit Committee until a police investigation is concluded, he says. It comes after he was arrested in connection with the police investigation into the party's finances. Mr Beattie is the second person to have been questioned by detectives who are trying to establish how more than £600,000 given in donations and set aside for an independence referendum has been used up. First Minister of Scotland Humza Yousaf has tweeted following the resignation announcement, offering his thanks and adding that the decision has come in the best interests of the party. In other news today, the Prime Minister's urging unionists in Northern Ireland to return to Stormont, saying restoring devolved institutions is the best way forward. Rishi Sunak was speaking alongside other world leaders in Belfast to mark 25 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. Former US President Bill Clinton is reported to have said it's time to get this show on the road. Mr Sunak also praised the courage of those involved as more powerful than 1,000 bombs or bullets and said citizens today should aspire to nothing less.
We need to create a more stable, devolved government in Northern Ireland. And that means getting the institutions up and running. The Belfast Good Friday Agreement left us an extraordinary and precious legacy. When we look back in 25 years from now, surely we should aspire for our legacy to be nothing less than this, that the institutions have been up and running for every single year.
Sunak. Now, a Home Office lawyer has said the government is estimating and preparing for 56,000 people to arrive in the UK by small boats this year. That's up from nearly 46,000 in 2022. The Home Office is currently accommodating 109,000 asylum seekers, 48,000 of those in hotels at a daily cost of £6.2 million. If the estimate is accurate, that'll take the total number of migrants supported by the taxpayer to between 120 and 140,000. The Scottish Government has said it has no option but to take legal action against UK ministers blocking their gender recognition bill. The legislation aims to make it easier for people in Scotland to change their legally recognised gender. Laws Westminster has challenged. MSPs voted in December last year to pass the controversial gender recognition bill by 86 votes to 39. An inquest has ruled the death of a doctor after his AstraZeneca COVID jab was due to unintended complications of the vaccine. 32-year-old Stephen Wright was an NHS psychologist in South East London. He died from a blood clot to the brain 10 days after his first dose of the vaccine in January 2021. Coroner Andrew Harris described it as a very unusual and deeply tragic case. Labour is accusing the government of denying justice to victims of the infected blood scandal. Between 1970 and 1991, thousands of people were infected with HIV and hepatitis after being given contaminated blood products. In an interim report, the chair of the inquiry, Sir Brian Langstaff, recommended that reparations should be extended to include bereaved parents and children. Cabinet Office Minister Jeremy Quinn told the Commons the government is considering the recommendation. But Richard Warwick, a victim of the scandal, told GB News earlier he was expecting more from the government statement.
But we ended up with a 35-minute statement of which three-quarters of which was just filled with platitudes about how wonderful the government had been. patting themselves on the back for the interim payments from last year for victims and spouses of the deceased. It was just everything that we didn't want to hear. Again, they're just kicking the can down the road as the victims are continuing to die.
Sir Robert Buckland has urged Just Stop Oil protesters not to disrupt the upcoming London Marathon. It comes after members of the group interrupted play at the World Snooker Championships in Sheffield this week by spreading orange powder across one of the tables in play and delaying the start of the Grand National by going onto the track. He told Gloria De Piero disruption is absolutely unnecessary.
I think is unacceptable, and I think unacceptable to the vast majority of the British people, is this, sudden lightning strike without any warning, disrupting not just everyday lives and going about our lawful business, but big events like the London Marathon. Now, I don't know about you, but I like running, and I haven't done a marathon, but I've done a few half marathons. Very good. And you need to just focus and concentrate on the road ahead. And I can't think of anything worse than a protester disrupting what is often charitable fundraising. So, my plea to them is, look, think again, please, guys. Make your point, but don't make it in a way that upsets and disrupts much-loved events like the marathon.
Now, the supermarket giant Tesco says it plans to appeal after Lidl won a High Court battle over branding. Lidl argued Tesco's use of a yellow circle on its club card was an infringement of their main store logo. A judge found in their favour, agreeing it was a violation of their trademark rights and copyright. That's all from me. I'm back in an hour. Now back to Michelle.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Martin Daubney, the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP, keeps me company, as does John McTernan, the political strategist and former advisor to Tony Blair. Good evening, gentlemen. Lots to get into tonight. You know the drill, though, don't you? It's not just about us three. It's about you at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? Get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk is how you email me. Or, as usual, you can tweet me at gbnews or at Michelle Dewbs. Before I get into my lead story today, which is about the smart motorway, should we have any mile at all of motorway in this country without a hard shoulder? I want you to ponder that. But before I get into that, just a quick reaction as a proud Scot, John. The Treasurer there, SNP, standing down. Is that the right move in your mind?
Well, it's chaos, isn't it? And the question is, who's next? Everybody at the top of the SNP has resigned or been forced out of office. And it means it's great news for the Labour Party, but terrible news for Scotland. There's no working government.
Yeah. Are you in Scotland? What's your thoughts on it all? What a mess. Martin, quick thoughts?
Yeah, I think if this rot goes to the top, then Sturgeon herself needs to be suspended. It really needs to go into that kind of, I think, administration state. The whole thing is utterly chaotic, makes a mockery of democracy north of the border, and, the Labour Party must be licking their lips at the prospect of
never a dull day in politics, is there? Never a dull day. Never a dull moment on Dewbs & Co either. Looking forward to the show tonight. Do you drive a car? Are you on a motorway? Often I am. And I find it absolute lunacy when I see motorways without a hard shoulder. And I find it very confusing when I seem to go, 1 minute I've got a hard shoulder, 1 minute I'm at the speed limit, then I'm at a slower speed limit, then there's not a hard shoulder. Very confusing if you ask me. But apparently 69% of motorists want there to be not a single mile of motorway without a hard shoulder. You'll be familiar with perhaps some of the new ones that have been planned, these so-called smart motorways. They press pause on them, they stop them, but apparently it's going to be too disruptive and too costly to retrofit the hard shoulders back onto the ones that already exist. Your thoughts, Martin?
Well, whoever invented smart motorways is the opposite of smart. I mean, they are an invention to a problem that didn't exist. They've caused 50 deaths. They've caused endless chaos. One stretch of the M1, where I travel back to Nottingham, where I'm from, has caused 4 deaths, but it's raised £6 million in speeding fines. I think that's actually the real point of these things. Everyone watching this show will be familiar with those temporary speed measures that are brought in. Oftentimes you don't see it. And, of course, the cameras, vehicle number plate recognition, you get nicked, you get a letter through the post, even late at night. I don't think there's a single argument in favour of them other than the fact they are an absolute way of milking the motorist dry once again. The idea that you can break down near a safe bay without having to walk, which obviously is disproportionately prejudiced against the infirm, the elderly, women, the precise people that society should deem to protect are being left the most vulnerable by this frankly idiotic, poorly thought out scheme, and they need to go. They're saying they're too costly to remove, but they're spending 900 million quid, Michelle, on more of these safe refuge bays. Get rid of them, get back to the hard shoulder, let's have some common sense back on the motorways.
Indeed. John?
Look, the problem we have in the UK is we don't have enough motorways. And what the government are doing is cancelling £1 billion of spending on motorways and not replacing it with anything. I'd like to see these extra capacity. It's extra capacity. I'd like to see this kept. I think if you take away the smart motorways, you'll constrict the traffic. There'll be more congestion for everybody who drives on motorways. The solution in the long term is adding an extra lane to almost every bit of motorway we've got in the country. But I know that would cause the government a problem because they're not investing in infrastructure. It would cause environmental demonstrators a field day because they'd be out in...
So you think it is fine to have these motorways without a hard shoulder? Yeah. Don't you worry about... I mean, have you ever had any cause to stop on a hard shoulder, firstly?
Yeah, in France, not in the UK.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. Yeah. So to be hurtling down and then know that, I don't know, you've got a blowout or whatever, and you've got nowhere to stop, wouldn't that petrify you?
Motorway accidents are petrifying. Breaking down the motorway is petrifying. We do want to have motorways in the country because we need to move faster around the country. We need more capacity. This is a way of having more capacity, and I think we do need to increase motorway capacity. I'd love to have seen my government, which bottled it, the Labour government, didn't build a whole toll road. There's a proposal to build a whole toll road parallel the M6. I think that would have been great. I think we have far fewer motorways per head of population than any other country in Europe. We need more motorways, but to reduce capacity by closing by closing off and creating new hard shoulders, I don't think that does anybody any good at all.
I do a lot of travelling, and I always have a little mantra. My family hear me say it often when I'm driving, and I'll speak to them and say I'm running late. I always say it's better to arrive dead late than dead. So, yes, I accept that there is some congestion and that actually, yeah, if you keep that road flowing as an all-lane, yes, you might get to your destination 10 minutes quicker, whoopee, or you might be one of the unfortunates that don't make it to your destination at all. One of the facts that I saw today, 1 in 12 motorway deaths actually occur on the hard shoulder, so they are not the kind of be-all and end-all, are they?
Yeah, and if you get rid of the hard shoulder, then that's obviously exacerbating that issue because there's literally nowhere to take salvage. You know, if you have a blowout or you break down, particularly at night time, then these deaths are occurring when basically, truckers are ploughing into the back of motorists who are stationary they don't see until it's too late. Now, who would have thought that removing a hard shoulder would increase the risk to stationary motorists? It's a no-brainer. And that's why I say, again, smart motorways are the opposite of smart. They should be scrapped.
It's not clear it increased risks. The thing is, driving is dangerous. It's one of the most dangerous, the biggest cause of death and injury in the country are road traffic accidents. We accept that the convenience of the car has a risk to it, and the risk is of crashes, of accidents, of injury, and in some cases death on the hard shoulder, whether it's a smart motorway or an ordinary hard shoulder. The thing is, we have to understand as a country, do we want to be, nannied, or do we want to have an acceptable level of risk? There is some risk in this, but there's some risk in motorway driving totally. Should we close all the motorways because there's deaths on them? Should we close all of the roads because there's deaths on them? That's one of the issues. Like, where are we in the balance of this? Does the motorist have freedom? And one of the frustrations that I've got, and I'll probably share it with Martin, in London is the proliferation of low traffic neighbourhoods everywhere.
Debate that often.
Trying to stop working class people who don't just drive to work, driving is their work. driving with a social care assistant.
You should have a word with Labour Mayor Sadiq Khan, who's choking.
I've had a word with my councillors in Southwark. I blooming hate it in Southwark.
Yeah. Well, on that we can agree, but this is part of the same problem, and it's not really about decreasing congestion. It's not really about increasing safety. I think it's about increasing revenue. It's about choking motorists and taking all the money.
I got done the other day, not on a motorway, just on a normal residential street, because I'm not a resident of that area. So I happened
you went through one of the...
Yeah, I did. I used the traffic app, which was saying, right, that's congested over there, go around there. So I was like, no flies on me, off round there I went. Opened the purse and I got a fine, which actually I hadn't opened in time, so then the fine had increased.
Of course it does. Yeah. But the problem with all of this is that it gives more control to the bureaucrats who fine us and restrict our movement, restrict our freedom. So smart motorways, low traffic neighbourhoods, congestion zones, ultra low emission zones, next to 15-minute cities where you're not allowed to go outside your zone without being taxed. All of this is taxation dressed as salvation. It's a way of milking the motorist driver. There are millions of motorists who should be voting against all this nonsense, and I wish they had a political party to land on.
Hey, I like that saying. Taxation dressed up, disguised as salvation. I like that. And you talk about
salvation,
you talk about congestion and all the rest of it. One of the things that really annoys me, because I do a lot of nighttime motorway driving, is how many roadworks I happen to see, how many cones I happen to see closing off entire lanes for what feels like miles without spotting a single solitary workman. They're nowhere to be seen. And I think to myself, well, why aren't you, if you're going to close this lane off, why aren't you working 24/7? And by the way, why didn't you do your roadworks when you closed down the entire country for about 2 years? But anyway, I'll park that one. Why aren't they working 24/7 then to do all of these roadworks?
I assume it's because the Department for Transport Contracts, Transport Contracts said 24-hour working on road maintenance, on repairs, on extensions, on whatever. Then that would happen, but it would obviously increase the labour costs. It would triple the labour costs, probably.
Yeah, well, no, it wouldn't really, because if you're going to take, I don't know, X amount of days, if you're going to do it 24/7, then yes, you need more people potentially because of sleep patterns, but you'll condense the time that you'll do it in.
Yeah, but the shift working will have costs. But look, I assume it's to do with the way they contract in the Department for Transport. I've not seen 24-hour working in European motorways, but I'm sure it could be done.
Yeah, well, we don't need to be exactly the same as the Europeans. I don't understand why can't... What do you think? 24 working? I wouldn't even just say to roads. I would just extend it to any... If you need to disrupt public, work 24 hours a day, not the same person, obviously, to make sure that the disruption is minimised.
Yeah, and the thing is, you're right, there'd be an increased labour cost in terms of night shift work and all the rest of it, but it'd be over a shorter duration. And so the gain to the broader economy from keeping the roads moving, keeping workers moving, would outweigh that. But of course, the bean counters of the Department of Transport don't think like that. They don't think about the motorist and the worker. They think about their own top line. And actually, they don't care about causing misery. They just want to hit their targets.
Sheila, she says, I'm here again. I just want to mention, she says, that in the United States, they call the hard shoulder a soft shoulder.
Do
they?
I've never heard that.
Hey, you learn something new every single day on Dewbs and Co. I don't know that. Paul says, Michelle, I can't get my head around this. People call for the stop of Grand National because a horse died, but yet they're happy not to ban smart motorways or to retrofit them. This is GB News, the People's Channel, and I will have some more of your thoughts in 2.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dewbs and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got Martin Daubney, the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP, and John McTernan, the political strategist. Welcome back, everyone. We've just been talking smart motorways. Baz says, my daughter broke down in a live lane with no hard shoulder. She called me begging for help. And he says, the fear in her voice will live with me forever. He says the government thought that the cost ratio was worth it when it comes to deaths and convenience and all the rest of it. They were wrong. He says, put the hard shoulders back now. Do you agree with him? Keep your thoughts coming in tonight. Let's, though, shall we talk councils? Have you just had your council tax risen? I suspect, by the way, you have. Maybe by 5%. Maybe you're in one of the unfortunate places where you've seen it rise a whole lot more. Do you sit there and think, I don't mind paying a little bit more, actually, because I get a great service from my council. I seem to get more things done than ever before. I bet you don't think that. Anyway, today there's been a lot of conversation about how much people in councils are paid, because thousands of people apparently around the country are receiving quite handsome 6-figure salaries. One council member was paid, are you ready, everyone? He's sitting down, £600,000 in a single year. Not a bad job, that. I might leave here and go off there. Can't be that difficult running a council, can it?
That chief executive, that was his redundancy pay. That's
all right then.
Well, it's all the pay required to wrap up a redundancy, so it's contractual. I think you should pay people who run councils a decent sum of money.
What do you call a decent sum of money?
A six-figure sum. It's still not comparable with what you get paid in the private sector for running an organisation which has a turnover of billions, which most county councils have turnover of billions. They've got huge tracts of land. They have huge responsibilities ranging from children's service, child protection, through to education. It's a very responsible job, and you do need to, you need to have the best. And so you pay peanuts, you get monkeys.
And do you think that these eye-watering sums do attract the best? Do you think when you look around our country as a whole, do you sit there and stroke your chin and go, yes, the best brains are leading these councils?
We've got pretty good council chief executives, I think. We have pretty underfunded councils. They've been underfunded for the last decade. They're part of the downward pressure that the Tory government have caused, and there's lots of things are creaking at the seams. Just like the health service service is underfunded, so schools are underfunded and generally councils are underfunded. But that's, you know...
Don't get me started.
They do a very good job with the money they have.
But am I being unfair before I bring Martin in? Because I feel a little bit like no matter what the problem is in this society, your answer is it's the fault of the Tory government.
Well, they've been in power for 13 years. They can't kind of run away from it.
You bring in the health service, by the way. Don't even get me started on that one, because, as I will always say, the health service in Wales is run by Labour, funded, of course, by Labour, and it is in a worse...
in the UK.
Yes, but they've got tax-raising powers devolved to them. If they want to spend, they choose what they spend on their health service. They spend more in Wales than they do in England, and it's in a worse state. They could increase taxes to fund it more if they felt they needed it. They don't.
In Scotland, but not in Wales.
I thought they did in Wales. Are you sure?
Not the Welsh Assembly government.
They can't raise taxes.
I believe so.
I'm sure one of my very smart viewers will tell me which one of us is right. What do you make to this all, Martin Daubney?
I'm sort of like about to chew the table. The fact that everything is the Tories.
Don't chew this table. I can't confirm the calibre of this table. I don't want responsibility for your ill health.
Everything is the Conservatives' fault, even when, you know, provably so many Labour councils are doing terribly, Liberal Democrats as well. I think this comes down to, you know, value for money for the taxpayer. And it strikes me as unconscionable that we have 608 councillors across the UK that are paid more than the Prime Minister. Now, if you paid 156 grand a year to run the country, why are you paid 4 times that to run a council? The numbers don't add up, especially when...
I agree, the PM should be paid more.
Well, before we get into that, when you ask the taxpayer, who has no say in setting these pay bands, because this is all jobs for the boys, it's all done behind sort of closed doors, that's the problem. And this idea that we have to pay private sector wages to get the best hand, it's the Gary Lineker argument. Meanwhile, we have to, like, suck it up, or we face, you know, jail for not being able to afford our council tax. All people really care about is weedy bins, potholes, not getting fined every time they park outside the chemist. And instead, we're getting taxed at every interface with bureaucracy to pay these sorts of salaries. You know, that salary doesn't pay for itself. It's paid for by the taxpayer. The taxpayer is being fined left, right and centre to stump up this sort of money. I think it's completely out of order. And do you honestly think, John, that a single council in this country would be run worse if the top salary was only 156,000 instead of 500,000? I think we'd notice no difference, but we could spend all that money on public services, and that's what people care about. Potholes, not financial black holes.
People care about child protection. Look at the reaction last week to that couple who killed their child after the court returned their child, and the child was killed over Christmas. We need more money spent on child protection. People do care about schools, primary schools, nurseries, secondary schools.
But have that
there's a wide range of areas where there's underfunding, and the thing is, you can tell that we need more than £156,000 a year spent on the Prime Minister, because look at the state of the country with the Prime Ministers we've had since 2010.
So how about, John, instead of paying 600 grand for a council leader, we get their pay down to 150 and spend 450 on child protection officers?
Well,
Spread the margarine elsewhere. That's surely the common sense approach.
People who are employed, if they're sacked, have the right to the redundancy. It's in their contract. That guy just got the redundancy in his contract. That's right. Workers shouldn't have their rights stripped from them, whether they are cleaners or whether they're chief executives. You have your right to the employment protection you have in your contract. In the way that we run these complicated services, which do run from child protection through to land management, you do need to attract people. Nobody's ever going to pay for councils the type of pay that's paid to the top chief executives in the private sector, but you do have to be competitive. There was a time when the Prime Minister, in the 20s, the Prime Minister of the UK was paid more than the editor of the Times. Now the editor of the Times is paid an incredibly large amount of money, and the PM is on this 156,000. Now, our current PM is the richest Prime Minister in history. He's not the cleverest Prime Minister in history, and he's certainly...
Not through salary. That's private equity. That's quite a separate thing.
And his wife is richer than King Charles.
That's immaterial to this. But back to the council.
Hang on, what's the Prime Minister's wife got to do with the price of cheese?
Yeah, let's keep this on council allocation of funds. You've had quite a while to talk. Surely the council taxpayer should have a say in this.
No.
Why not?
I don't think council taxpayers should have any control over the pay of
they're
staff,
paying their wages.
whether the staff are social workers or whether the staff are teachers. The question of the pay is set by the market. In that, if you have vacancies, you need to increase pay, and we do in primary schools need to increase pay. In secondary schools, to employ maths teachers.
These people aren't voted in.
They shouldn't be voted in. We should have. You have direct council. Chief executives aren't voted in and shouldn't be voted in. Council officers, I wouldn't want social workers voted in. I want to have, councils.
But they set their own salaries, don't they? I mean, they set their own pay bands.
No, the council officers, those pay bands are negotiated nationally with the local government employers.
And they all agree on a great big fat pay band because they're all jobs for the boys, because there's a majority of councillors of one party.
We have collective we have unions and negotiation. And unions negotiation end up in salaries. That's actually
those
the way the
socialist unions that give 600 grand salaries.
Nobody's being paid 600 grand. You know that, and you're just distorting that.
Well, when you say they're not being paid that, if that's what your package is, and that's what your package is,
it's his redundancy. It's not a pay. It's not his annual pay. It's his pay for the rest of his life.
I'm always fascinated.
He's now redundant.
I'm always fascinated on how failure. What happens when council leaders, or anyone, quite frankly, in the public sector, if your council fails, for example, is put into bankruptcy measures multiple times, in the case of Croydon, by the way, and then you see people wandering off into the sunset with very handsome packages. Is that right? I definitely think it is not. Anyway, your thoughts, keep them coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. I'll have some of those in too, but let me ask you this. If your dog attacked your child, would you keep them? The dog, not the child. See you in 2.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I have walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me, Martin Daubney, the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP, and John McTernan is a political strategist and former advisor to Tony Blair. Lots of you guys getting in touch tonight. Not many of you are in favour of the smart motorways. Derek says, if they won't retrofit the hard shoulders, why can't they impose an immediate 50-mile-an-hour zone on, speed limit on the motorways? Oh, gosh. I don't know which one I'd find more annoying. A 50-mile-an-hour speed limit? I don't know. Would that be much safer?
No.
I don't think people even really stick to these temporary speed measures anyway. Richard says you need big money for big brains, but you're quite harsh, you're saying it doesn't apply to running councils. Goodness me. Darryl says my council tax has risen by the maximum amount for the last 9 years. How dare they command such wages, he says. You're saying, PB, I don't know what your name is, you're saying you're appalled with these salaries, and how can it be right, you're asking, that a chief exec of a council can essentially earn more than the Prime Minister? That conversation will rumble on and on, I am sure of that. By the way, we're talking about Wales early on as well. The Wales Act 2014 and the Wales Act 2017 devolved taxation and borrowing powers to the Welsh Government and the National Assembly for Wales. I think that means that I'm right. Doesn't happen often, so when it does, I'll celebrate it. John McTernan. Anyway, that was us talking about the state of NHS in Wales. The answer always seems to be, well, it's the Tories. The Tories have broken everything. So when I ponder then, why is the NHS in Wales in such a state? No one really can give me a straight answer to that. Maybe you can at home. Your thoughts, as always, are very welcome. Let's talk dogs, shall we? Do you have one? Man's best friend and all that? Well, a mum has come under a little bit of fire, to put it mildly, because her dog, their dog, bit and attacked their 3-year-old daughter. Now, I am going to show you the image of this because I think it needs a little bit of context. But before I do so, I will just warn you, if you're squeamish or upset at these things, you might perhaps want to look away from your screen now while I just show you this image. Right, so there you go. I blurred the little girl's face out, but you can see the face. If you're listening, not watching, take my word for it. It's quite a large bite that covers quite a lot of that little girl's face. Martin Daubney, the mum involved decided to keep the dog. And it really has divided opinion, not least in her own family. If I make it less, for example, about that family and more as the concept generally, where do you stand on it?
Well, what happened in this instance was that the dog was ill, she maintains, and the daughter was pulling the dog's tail and baiting the dog, and the dog turned around and bit the child. And I think in that context, and oftentimes we see half of the dog injuries on humans are children, and the vast majority are 4 to 9-year-olds. They're basically unaware of what's safe. They're children. They're learning boundaries. And there, I think we need to bring in parental responsibility. The responsibility of the owner should be watching. Like I'm a cat person. I like cats, but I also...
I saw a man, true story, sorry to interrupt, I've got to get this off my chest. I actually saw a man today, true story, with a cat on a lead.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot.
I mean, who even does that? A cat on a lead? Well, I thought it was really cruel, but anyway, I digress. Go on.
It stops them getting chased by dogs and getting ran over, so it's actually in favour...
No, he was walking down a high street.
Yeah, to stop them getting ran over, probably, because they get spooked easily. Anyhow, I think in the instance of dangerous dogs, Staffordshires and all that, lots of people love those dogs and have no problem whatsoever. But I think leaving children alone with dogs, especially young children, those who are statistically and provably the most at risk, is the issue. So I think it's about responsible ownership. And this mother wasn't being responsible because she wasn't in the room. The daughter pulled the tail of a sick dog, bit the dog. So really, I would say the mother should have been watching that dog and her daughter like a hawk. She wasn't. She has to carry some blame.
Where do you stand on it?
Well, talking about those cats on a lead, there was a French poet in the 19th century who liked to have a lobster on a lead. He said, a lobster doesn't bark, but it does know the mysteries of the deep.
Well, there you go.
Very French and very poetic. But look, on this case...
Expanding our cultural kind of repertoires that we like it.
I would take that dog away instantly. That's an irresponsible mother, not just simply because the child is injured, irresponsible for wanting to keep the dog. That dog should be put down. I think child safety is far more important than animal welfare. I'm an absolutist on that.
So you definitely put the dog down. Not about when the mum says, but hang on a minute, this is just a dog, a lovable dog that was ill and all the rest of it. That don't wash with you.
But look at the child's face, scarred for life by that dog. That dog does deserve to be put down for that.
Right. I'm going to take a moment then. I think I've got a picture of the dog because I want to see whether or not you change your mind when you see the dog.
It's quite a cute dog.
Look at that, everyone. If you're not watching and you're listening on the radio instead, I am not a dog person, I must confess. But even I see that dog.
That's
the dog's name is
sadistic,
Bart.
it's vicious.
And I look at it and I'm going, oh, you little cute thing.
Yeah.
So when you say, John McTernan, that dog should be put down, and then you see that dog...
Judge that dog by its actions. We don't say the defendant is guilty but very cute.
But when you've looked at Bart there, would you honestly still put it down?
That dog will not live as long as the girl who's going to live a whole full life, but with a scar on her face permanently because that dog's been...
Very black and white there from John McTernan.
I mean, it was rather a cute sort of spaniel. I think the image you were portraying, John, was sort of frothing at the mouth, hound of the Baskerville, some sort of deadly attack dog. And I think that just heightens the point. This was an ordinary dog that was irritated by a child and turned and did what dogs do. And that mother shouldn't have left the child alone.
An ASBO for the dog or an ASBO for the mother?
The mother shouldn't be leaving a child alone with a sick dog. The mother has to take responsibility. The fact she's sticking up for the dog, to me, is covering her own guilt.
Yeah.
Well, who's this? Trevor says the mother... Oh, you're harsh, Trevor. Cool, blimey, he says the mother doesn't deserve either the child or the dog. Trevor says no matter how well trained a dog is, you can't always trust a dog 100%. Do you think that's... I mean, I'm not a dog person. I don't have dogs. I'm quite frightened of dogs, actually. So I don't know. But Dave says, what is the mum going to tell her daughter when she grows up scarred? Or Dave says, what about if that dog goes on to attack somebody else's child? What then? I was bit by my friend's dog, says Andy. The dog was put down, but the dog had also bitten their cousin, the family cousin, before then.
Wow.
Avril says, I had an amazing dog, but as it got older, it started biting, and I had to do my duty to both the dog and my family. People, she says, should never, ever leave a baby or a child with a dog. Do you agree with that or not? Is there anyone out there that perhaps would be in that situation and loves their pet so much that you might take the side of the mother and say, well, actually, it was a one-off? You might have been in that situation yourself. Get in touch, let me know. You can tweet me as well at Michelle Dewbs. I'm going to ask you, just stop oil. You know they are by now, don't they? Let's cut to the chase. Is it time to label these groups basically domestic terrorists? Or one of my panel says no, they should be named domestic heroes. I bet you can tell which of my panel thinks which. What do you think? I'll see you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Martin Daubney, the journalist and the former Brexit Party MEP, and John McTernan is a political strategist and a former advisor to Tony Blair. You know, we've just been talking about the dog that bit the child and what should happen to it. I would say, actually, that you guys are divided on that one. Mike said you didn't tell us what breed of dog it was. A Cocker Spaniel is the answer. I've got to be honest, I wouldn't know one breed from another, I don't think. But yeah, it was a Cocker Spaniel. No messing around when it comes to John McTernan. He's basically saying if a dog bites the child, put it down straight away. What did you just say? One bite? What was your slogan?
One bite and you're out.
One bite and you're out. Well, Derek is one of my listeners in Durham, he says he is. He says, can you ask John McTernan a question then? If he says one bite and you're out, does he say you should bring back capital punishment then for child murderers?
No.
Why?
I'm against capital punishment for any human being.
Oh, right, so you'd put a dog down if it bit somebody.
Like I said,
but if a human tortured and killed another human, they can live.
Yeah, there's no offence in which there should be capital punishment. Anyway, the UK is actually signed to an international treaty, so we can never bring back the death penalty.
Well, what do you make to that logic? Some of you perhaps will disagree, but some of you, I'm sure, equally will agree. Lots of people are saying for the first time they agree with you tonight on that dog situation. Right, let's talk, shall we?
Had to happen.
I know. What did you say? A clock?
Like a stop clock.
Yeah, indeed. Right, just stop oil. Let's cut to the chase. We could sit here and I can highlight all the goings-on that they're doing, but you all know, and I don't even like to give all their ridiculousness too much publicity, quite frankly. There's talk that they're potentially going to disrupt the marathon and all the rest of it. I'm going to cut to the chase. Some people are saying it's time now that they should be labelled eco-terrorists. One of my panellists agrees, and one of them says no. They should be labelled eco-warriors, eco-heroes, domestic heroes.
Freedom fighters.
I bet at home you can guess which panel member thinks which one. I'm going to start with you, John. You are not in the camp of calling them eco-terrorists.
No, the thing about the IRA and the unionist terrorists during the Troubles was they wanted to kill people, destroy our country. Stop Oil want to save lives and save the planet. They'll be looked back on, Stop Oil will be looked back on in a century's time, maybe even sooner, as standing up for the right thing, standing up for the planet and trying to save a planet which we are destroying through burning fossil fuels. It's time to end burning of fossil fuels. It's time to take on big fossil fuel, big oil, big coal, big gas. It's time to change the way we run our economy. And these people are part of the future. They're trying to save us from our own actions.
The Terrorism Act 2000 defines terrorism both in and outside the UK as the use or threat of one of the following things, where they are designed to influence the government
Moving yourself to the road.
or to intimidate the public. The use or threat must be for the purpose of advancing a political, religious, racial or ideological cause. And the specific actions are as follows: serious violence against a person, serious damage to property, creating a serious risk to the health and safety of the public or a section of the public, and action designed to seriously interfere with or disrupt an electronic system. We know what these guys do to stop oil, whether it's, stopping flow of traffic.
Gluing yourself to a road is not the same as the IRA bombing campaign. Totally different.
No, hang on, because I just want to be clear before Martin, because I know you disagree. The definition of terrorism in this country is not the IRA bombing campaign. That's not where the definition starts and ends. I've just read you the definition.
And gluing yourself to the road is out with the definition.
Well, you think it's funny. I bet you wouldn't think it's funny if you was stuck in a traffic jam trying to get a loved one to the hospital because you can't get an ambulance, and you're disrupted by these lot gluing themselves to the road. Anyway, go on, Martin.
Just when people agree with John on dogs, he's just stopped making sense on this one. I'm sorry. I mean, and just stop oil themselves have completely lost the plot. Just stop the snooker. Just stop the marathon. No, just stop anyone getting to work. This isn't about oil anymore. It's about narcissism. It's about creating the most disruption, the most social media clicks, the most media attention. It's navel-gazing, entitled, privileged, well-off people inflicting their luxury belief system on the working classes who just want to go to work. I just want to pay the bills. I just want to get by. And you're right to draw up the subtlety on the definition of terrorism. It isn't causing death by explosions or other means. And there is precedent in America. The eco-terrorist section includes the Earth Liberation Front. Now, they're a group who set fire to a lot of things. Now, just all aren't setting fire, but they're smashing windows. They're causing damage to property.
Suffragettes.
They're stopping people. They were, at the time, classified a terrorist organisation, if you remember, by the government at the time. The suffragettes were. And so there we go. But they were blowing things up. This aren't yet. But what about making them accountable for the loss of revenue, the loss of life? They have caused loss of life. You're right, in ambulances that can't get past their protest. The loss of revenue to individuals who can't get to work. Taxi drivers, delivery drivers, plumbers, decorators, the people who don't care about saving the planet in as far as the bigger notion. They care about surviving themselves. And they don't ever go to Beijing. They don't ever go to India, the biggest polluters on the planet. They target soft, middle-class targets like Fortnum and Masons, Harrods, the snooker, so polite. Try it down the Millwall. Go on, get yourself down the Millwall and let's see what the working classes make of these Tarquins. Then they'll get some street justice, just like they did in Canning Town when they got on top of the tube. What happened? They were dragged down and they got a bit of a shoeing. Now, I can't say I agree with that, but I've got to say I was cheering along when it happened, because these people do not represent ordinary working people.
Nobody in Britain believes, nobody I think on this show, hardly any of your viewers, should believe in mob justice. We have a justice system and people should be taken through the courts properly.
But if the police don't police, but protesting like the public do.
But protesting like the suffragettes did, the suffragettes are a great example. They were regarded by the political elite of the time as terrorists. They were standing in the mainstream. Imagine, looking back on it, the extremists were the people who denied the vote to women. Nowadays, the world is burning. At this very moment, Asia is having record heats, and there are deaths across the whole of Asia. There are record heats in continental America as well. There are terrible things going on. And the reason why people are protesting in our country is that we are responsible, from the time of the Industrial Revolution onwards, for 250 years' worth of pollution. A lot of the damage, most of the damage that's been done to the climate was being done by us, was done by the global north.
There's been more pollution in the last 10 years from China than from Britain since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
The global north.
The beginning, in the last 10 years. So the target...
Our pollution is everywhere.
Do you think the Industrial Revolution brought anything good?
Yeah,
yes.
I do think it did. I thought it brought trade unions and socialism. That's a good thing it brought.
Trade union. John McTernan, you do make me smile, I have to say.
It brought increased life expectancy. It brought
not initially.
Increased wealth.
After trade unions.
Increased equality.
It shrunk the heights of the average Londoner by about 6 inches, and it reduced life expectancy. But then it brought after the union
this lot
movement.
don't care about that. I mean,
they care about the future. They care about the future, and working class people care about the future because they care about their kids, they care about their grandchildren, they care about their families, they care about, you know, Millwall fans care about the future.
Do you? Are you a Millwall fan? Do you sit there and support
now.
just Stop Oil? I'm fascinated to hear your views on that one. That one will rumble on and on. Ken says it's well known that Britain is not a major polluter globally, so why don't these guys go over and campaign at the countries that are, China's and places like that? Philip says these guys are the liberal elite who despise anyone who don't share their point of view. One of you just sent me your dog as well and said that it did bite your child and you did decide to keep it, but your child was 30. You should have known better, you say. John, Martin, thank you very much for the conversation. Thank you guys at home. I'm off tomorrow, Friday, so I'll see you on Monday.
Good evening. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office. My name's Alex Deakin, and it will be a bit of a chilly start tomorrow, but generally a fine and sunny day. Still that easterly breeze, making things feel fairly fresh on the east coast. High pressure sitting just to the north and around the high. That wind continuing to come in from the east. So brisk winds bringing a chilly feel to Scarborough and Cromer.